places here this afternoon, so strap yourselves in. Our first panel moderator is the legendary Peter Bryant.
Oh, thank you.
Our time frame's tight, and we're going to hear a lot from them. Peter, over to you.
Mate, Richard, thanks so much. Delight to be here. So this panel very illustrious, and we'll introduce them as we go. So we're going to talk about the big topic of decarbonisation. And if you came here to listen to how we electrify 300-tonne trucks, I would suggest you go grab a cup of coffee, because that's actually not what we're going to talk about. So just to, but I think what I want to do, what we'll be doing is just having a conversation. And what I want to do is just put some context around, and then we'll be going around each person. So why are we doing decarbonisation in the context of a just energy transition? So the mining sector has a responsibility to provide resources that are responsibly extracted and processed. And there's more than just decarb, but it's a very important aspect. And when we look at decarbonisation, we're talking about the mobile fleet, we're talking about fixed plant processing, and even through smelting, because some of the mining companies do smelting. And we also want to look at the nexus with water, because I think we always need to talk about energy and water in the same breath, because they're very much related. And other areas we'll cover, areas of energy intensity, waste to value, obviously efficiencies, and also how do communities fit in amongst all this, because I'm a big believer we should never just talk about, as they say, inside the fence. We should always be talking about how do we do decarbonisation, clean energy in the context of the communities in which we are operating, where that's relevant. So obviously before you do decarbonisation, you need to get a handle on the baseline, because what are you decarbonising and what's your baseline? So John, who's the Vice President of the Colorado School of Mines, Global Future Energy Initiative. So John, you've been doing work on, kind of taking a systems approach to baselining carbon emissions, and as an important starting point, do you want to kind of just talk a little bit about what does that actually mean, and what are the things we need to think about?
Sure. So when it comes to the energy transition, we're very much focused on a systems approach to thinking about this. We think that the systems approach is really going to be required if we want to meet the goals that we have as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So if you look at the energy transition at the largest scale, we're very much focused on renewables as a source of energy for the future, but of course the renewables depend on all the raw materials that the mining industry can deliver, and there are limitations in how quickly that can come. So of course those two systems then are interconnected with oil and gas, and to manage the emissions from all of those, we need carbon capture, utilization, sequestration. Each one of those areas that I mentioned are large systems within themselves. So we have faculty at Mines who are very much focused on using a systems dynamics modeling approach to model these very complex nested systems. And the key idea is that you can perturb a complicated system with a management choice or a policy decision, and see what the consequences of that are, and potentially identify unanticipated consequences. So if you take that same modeling approach and scale it down to a mining operation, you might only look at, say, extraction and haulage of ore and waste. You might look at the process of crushing and grinding, processing the ore, and then your outputs. So you could draw a box around that. And each one of those are a system in themselves. So it becomes very complicated. So Shebnam Duzgan, who leads one of our decarbonization groups, is taking a machine learning approach to doing that modeling in a rigorous way. And so for just a very simple example that might seem obvious, first of all, the total carbon emissions over the life cycle of a mine also depend on the production output. But depending on the jurisdiction you're in, if you decide to electrify part or all of your system by tying into the local grid, if that local grid is powered by a coal generating power plant, then you've potentially increased your Scope 2 emissions to a greater extent than you would have by not electrifying to begin with. So it's very important to understand all of those connections. So that's a very simple example, and to do it in detail is more complex.
Now that's important to kind of understand what all the different levers are.
Exactly.
And consequences. So we've got Martin here all the way from Germany, Managing Director for the German Mining Association. And Martin, obviously you guys are dealing in a lot of areas, but maybe just start off with this nexus of water and energy. And, you know, water's a key area. We know that Chile has banned the use of, groundwater, but then that requires massive energy for desalination, transportation of water, etc. So one area we want to talk about, do you want to kind of just unpack that a little for us and why it's important?
I will try so. So first of all, to set you in the picture, so Germany is probably not well known as a mining country. We are not one of the biggest, but still there is a lot of mining going around in various fields. And the good thing with that is that we have a lot of technology development. And this comes back to your previous question. So why decarbonization? Certainly mining is part of the industry as a whole. In Germany, we set the plan that we want to be carbon free by the year 2045. So that's not a long way to go. So we have to put in measures into the mines to decarbonize. So looking on concrete on the water issue, which is much more under focus here in this area of Saudi Arabia and certainly in South America, where climate change is already going on and where you have a lot of evaporation. And the mining industry as a whole is a larger consumer of water, and especially fresh water. So in there, we have to look at different issues. It's the treatment of the water on the mine site, which is much important or becomes new importance. You have to retreat it, you have to double use it for the various purposes. John named the purposes. They are manifold. That is one thing. In many areas, and especially Chile, water is not available. The government now made a ban on that, and so it's not allowed anymore to take fresh water because there are some reasons running out of water. So, and this leads us to the desalination of water and the requirement. So, desalination plants at the mine site or outside the mine site with larger units is a solution which is already practiced in Chile. But how would that work in a decarbonized world? Only if you operate desalination plants also with renewable energies. And this leads us to the decarbonized mine of the future, having the renewable energy directly on site. The good thing, and this is valid for Chile as well as for Saudi Arabia, is that they are in a really preferred region to use wind power as well as solar energy. So there are all possibilities to do so and install autonomous energy sourcing at the mine sites, and then to introduce the different measures which are required to get efficiency also in the water area.
Great. Thanks, Martin. So, Maya, we're going to switch gears away from technology now. And I mentioned communities, and often we forget about communities, particularly when it relates to energy. Can you talk to us about, how should we be thinking about communities, their energy needs in the context of the mine energy and decarbonisation and prosperity for communities, which we know are all important. You're passionate about it, I'm passionate about it. So.
Well, thank you. And actually, technology is part of what we're doing with communities. And when I first saw the title innovation, I thought we better be exciting, and we are. And that's where I'm very excited to highlight Resolve sister organization, Regeneration Enterprises. And in essence, what Regeneration Enterprises is seeking to do is reframe the whole perspective of waste decarbonization and tailings and all that, reframe that in terms of a resource including for communities as well. So what regeneration does, very excitingly, is looking at mined out areas, waste and tailings, a lot of those which are in communities, and remining those for critical minerals, but also with an eye to restoration. And, you know, don't take just my word for it. There's a reason Rio Tinto is all in on regeneration enterprises. And part of that work goes to the heart of anchoring that even on nature-based solutions to decarbonization, working directly with the communities. This also comes from, it's been proven, for example, in what Resolve did with salmon gold as well, in some of the communities in Alaska. And that's why, again, companies like Apple does have salmon gold in its supply chain. So is this approach, in summary, to think of decarbonization, to think of the energy needs in terms of how this is also a resource for communities as well as the industry?
Great, thanks very much. And we've got to mention you're with Resolve organisation based in Nairobi. So moving Aziz, Deputy CEO of Maden. You guys are doing some really interesting things that you shared with me a couple of days ago around, you know, waste to value, closed loop systems in the areas that we've been talking about. It'd be great to kind of understand what you guys are doing both today and in the future in terms of decarbonisation, and also the water aspects. It would be great to share as well.
Good. Actually, in Ma'aden, we are relatively a new mining company, so we utilize the best available technology in our business. Give you an example, in the phosphate, we are not importing water and we are not importing energy. So we utilize the waste heat coming from our processes to the last drop. Also within this complex, we are producing about 1,038 blue ammonia, which is considered as really a good source of clean energy. In the decarbonization, in our strategy is really to reduce our emission by 2040 almost by 60%. And our base is 2020. We defined the three levers to achieve our strategy. The first one is renewable, and the renewable is, we have three major initiatives. One is a mega production of renewable energy, which is going to be used in the smelter. That's about 500 megawatt. We just signed the contract to pursue this project. The second level is really a small units which is serving most of our mine. We will start with Al Baitha, the bauxite mine, where we are trying really to get rid of the diesel and put the renewable energy. And also the second one is direct use of the concentrated solar power and producing steam for the refinery. This project also have been signed a few months ago, and we are working on this. The first unit started with the renewable energy is the Mansoura Masarra gold mine, which is started last quarter. We started the production. And this is one of the steps which we are proud of. The water story in Ma'aden is really a very good story to tell. In the water, we are bringing the water from Taif, which is declining there, so we don't use that much energy to bring it. So we bring the water, the recycled water and treated water from Taif and use it to produce the gold at the level of 60 to 70% of our gold production is based on the treated water or recycled water. In In the north, we just commissioned a project where we reduce our consumption from the aquifer by 50% in the fertilizer. And we have research to modify our process to accept the recycled water and also to improve it to 100%. Our refinery using zero water, so we have 100% recovery. And the second lever is really working in the process. And the process which is emitting less carbon is really our target. We are working with our partner. We are expecting really a breakthrough in the aluminum industry by the year 2027. We will have a technology which is dramatically reducing the emission from the smelter by almost 50%. So this is how we are and what we are doing in Ma'aden. We are looking really in the future, and we are cooperating with most of the Saudi Research and Development Center to resolve those issues. And also we have a relationship and close coordination with some international innovation firms, which we are looking really to find something in the industry.
Thank you. Very exciting, and also the advantage of not having too much of a legacy, right?
Yeah.
That really helps a lot. So last but not least, Fayed, you're with SABIC, which I think, I always like to think there's a lot to learn from other industries. So it'd be good if you could just kind of explain a little bit about what SABIC's doing around decarbonisation, and maybe what could mining learn from what you guys are doing.
Okay, thank you, Peter. I think it's a common challenge. If you look at the chemical industry or even the minerals in general, there are common challenges, as well as if you look at the enablers, it is the same. So we are in SABIC, when we developed our carbon neutrality strategy, which was announced in 2021 during the Saudi Green Initiative, we utilized the framework of circular carbon economy, which is the concept or the platform